Get your hands where I can see them. The command cracked through the air like a thunderclap, slicing straight through the fluorescent hum of the Houston supermarket. For a moment, everything froze. The rustle of paper bags, the murmur of shoppers, even the low buzz of the ceiling lights. At the end of aisle 5, Agent Marcus Hale stopped mid-step, his focus shattered. He had been tailing a woman for months, 9 long, sleepless months of tracking wire transfers and coded messages. Her name was Leah Moreno, a money launderer with connections that reached higher than anyone wanted to admit. And now, just as he was closing in, a police officer's voice was tearing his operation apart. Officer Derek Lawson stood at the other end of the aisle, hand hovering near his holster, eyes blazing with suspicion. His tone carried the kind of authority that came not from confidence, but from fear, the kind that trembles under its own weight. To the shoppers watching, Marcus looked like any other man in a hoodie and jeans, dark-skinned, calm, unreadable. But to Derek, he looked like trouble. "Don't move," Derek barked, voice shaking with adrenaline. Marcus didn't flinch. He had seen this before, too many times. That flash of disbelief in a white officer's eyes when confronted with a black man who carried himself with calm authority. Slowly, deliberately, Marcus raised his hands. His voice came out steady, measured, every syllable controlled. "Agent Marcus Hale, FBI, you're interfering with a federal operation." He reached into his pocket with exaggerated care and held up his badge between 2 fingers. The badge gleamed under the harsh supermarket lights, but Derek's hand only tightened on his gun. "You expect me to believe that?" Derek snapped. "In a hoodie and sneakers? Get down now." The hum of the store shifted. Shoppers began backing away, phones lifting like a forest of black mirrors, each one recording. A child whimpered somewhere near the produce section. Someone whispered, "Is he really FBI?" Another voice muttered cynically, "Yeah, that's what they all say." Marcus's pulse thrummed, not from fear, but from the familiar sickness of déjà vu. He had worn a badge before joining the bureau. City police, pressed uniform, polished boots. Back then, he'd watched his partner drag a teenage boy off a park bench for loitering. He tried to speak up. The department called it insubordination. The captain's words still haunted him. Asterisk, don't make it about race, Hale. Just follow orders. Asterisk, he had left that world to find one where truth mattered more than orders. Yet here he was again, different badge, same blindness. Through the tiny speaker in his ear, his partner's voice came quietly, urgent. "Marcus, stand down. Don't escalate. I'm coming in. Elena Vargas." Calm, sharp, steady as stone. Marcus caught her reflection in a convex mirror at the end of the aisle. She was already moving, weaving between startled customers. "Sir," Marcus said evenly, never taking his eyes off Derek, "you're compromising an ongoing investigation. Step back and call your captain before this gets worse." "Don't tell me how to do my job," Derek barked, voice brittle. He gestured toward the floor with his weapon. "Down." Marcus took a slow breath. The crowd was silent except for the faint squeak of a shopping cart wheel. "If you do this," he said quietly, "you'll regret it for the rest of your career." Derek's nostrils flared. "Is that a threat?" "No," Marcus replied. "That's a fact." The standoff stretched like wire ready to snap, until Elena's voice rang out behind them, sharp and commanding. "FBI, lower your weapon." Derek's head whipped around. She stood at the aisle's edge, badge out, gun drawn but pointed low, her tone all authority. "He's with me. Agent Marcus Hale, Federal Bureau of Investigation." Confusion flickered across Derek's face. His grip faltered, his voice smaller now. "You've got to be kidding me." But the gun lowered just slightly. The damage, though, was already done. By the time Derek realized his mistake, Leah Moreno had already slipped out through the automatic doors. The woman Marcus had hunted for 9 months was gone, her black sedan disappearing into the glow of the Houston evening. Inside her car, Leah smirked, scrolling through a burner phone. "Tell Navarro we're clean," she texted. Asterisk, the cops just saved us 9 months of surveillance. Asterisk. Back in the store, Elena's composure cracked for the first time. She turned on Derek, her voice low and cutting. "You just blew a federal case." Do you have any idea what you've done? Derek tried to defend himself, stumbling over words. He looked suspicious. Marcus's patience snapped. His voice, low but heavy, cut through the noise. He looked like what? Someone who didn't fit your idea of what law enforcement looks like. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every phone was still recording. Every pair of eyes saw the same thing. A black agent forced to justify his presence in his own operation. Elena took Marcus's arm gently. "We need to go," she whispered, "before this becomes a circus." He nodded, his chest heavy. Not anger, just exhaustion. The kind that comes from fighting the same battle over and over in different uniforms. As they left the store, Derek stood frozen near the registers, the weight of humiliation pressing on him. A teenage boy in the crowd met his eyes, shaking his head, not in hatred, but in disappointment. That hurt worse than anything. Outside, the Houston dusk burned orange across the skyline. Marcus leaned against the hood of the bureau car, eyes closed for a long moment, trying to quiet the storm inside. His earpiece buzzed. "Hail report." It was Carla Bennett, his supervisor, sharp, no nonsense. He straightened. Operation compromised. Target escaped. Cause: local interference. There was a pause. "Local interference?" she repeated. "You mean police?" "Yes, ma'am." In the passenger seat, Elena drove in silence. Neon lights flickered past the windshield like ghosts. After a while, she said softly, "You handled that better than most would have." Marcus didn't answer. He stared out at the night, the city's reflection in his eyes. Finally, he murmured, "You ever get tired of having to prove you belong?" Elena gave a weary smile. Every single day. Behind them, somewhere in the city, Leia Moreno's car merged into the highway. Ahead, her path curved into shadow. For Marcus Hale, the operation was over, but something deeper had begun. A reckoning. By the next morning, the video had spread across every major platform. The headline blazed across screens like a scar. "White cop confronts black FBI agent. You won't believe what happens next." Houston woke to a storm. Talk shows dissected it. Online debates raged, and the same 90 seconds of footage replayed in endless loops. Derek's gun, Marcus's calm defiance, Elena's intervention, the confusion, the crowd. Some defended Officer Derek Lawson, claiming he was just doing his job. Others saw what Marcus Hale had lived with for years, the quiet indignity of having to prove his legitimacy in a country that still doubted him. But inside the FBI field office, there was no time for outrage. There was only failure. Marcus stood before a massive monitor as the footage replayed in slow motion, each frame a reminder of what had slipped through his fingers. His target, Leia Moreno, was gone. 9 months of surveillance, dozens of sleepless nights, and hundreds of hours of undercover work, all gone in 2 minutes of chaos. Behind him, Carla Bennett, his supervisor, folded her arms. Her tone was razor-sharp. 9 months of work compromised because a local cop decided to play hero. You should have controlled the scene. Marcus didn't respond. He didn't need to. The silence between them carried its own weight. Carla turned to Elena Vargas, who had been reviewing surveillance feeds. "Agent Vargas, any visuals on the suspect?" Elena shook her head. She exited through the south door. Security footage shows her heading toward the parking lot. Partial plate, but she switched vehicles 10 minutes later. Carla exhaled through her nose. "Then we start over. Find out who tipped her off." The words hit Marcus like a quiet accusation. Someone had known the operation was in play and had given Leia the perfect distraction. Across town, Officer Derek Lawson sat alone at his precinct desk, staring at the glowing suspension notice on his computer screen. His captain, Victor Reyes, stood behind him, arms crossed and voice low with restrained fury. "You realize what this looks like?" Reyes said. "You stop an FBI agent mid-operation. On camera. During a federal case. The bureaus filed a complaint." Derek swallowed hard. He didn't identify himself clearly. Reyes's eyes hardened. "He did. You didn't listen." There was no shouting, no profanity, just disappointment. And somehow that cut deeper. "Take a few days," Reyes said finally. "Stay off the streets. We'll review it." Derek nodded mutely and closed the laptop. The badge on his desk felt heavier than ever. He picked it up, turned it in his hand, and for the first time, he wondered if he deserved it. Meanwhile, miles away, in a dim motel room off the highway, Leah Moreno sat on the edge of her bed, the faint glow of her phone screen flickering across her tired face. The video of the supermarket confrontation played again, this time with her name in the captions below. "They think they can catch me," she muttered. "They don't even know what they're chasing." Her burner phone buzzed. A message appeared from an encrypted app. Asterisk, stay low. Navarro's got your back. Asterisk. The name made her pause. Sergeant Luis Navarro. Once her contact, now her lifeline. He had fed her just enough information to stay ahead of the bureau, though neither of them had truly trusted the other. He thought he was helping her pay for her son's medical bills. She thought she could outsmart him. In truth, both had been pawns in a much larger game, a laundering network that ran through shell grocery chains, fake EBT transactions, and political contributions across 4 states. At that same moment, back at Grandway's supermarket, Mia Chun, a young security guard with sharp instincts, reviewed the store's surveillance feeds. She leaned toward the screen, eyes narrowing at a familiar face. "Agent Vargas," she said when Elena arrived. "I think you need to see this." The footage showed Luis Navarro standing near the service exit 2 hours before the confrontation. His uniform wasn't local. He said he was responding to a call, Mia explained, but there was no call logged. Elena's expression hardened. "Send that to me." Mia hesitated. "If he's involved, this could get me in trouble." Elena placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You did the right thing." While Elena chased leads, Marcus faced another kind of storm, the one brewing outside the bureau's doors. Reporters crowded the sidewalk, cameras flashing like lightning. "Agent Hale," one shouted. "How does it feel to be profiled on duty?" Marcus kept walking jaw tight. He didn't answer. He didn't want this to become another story about race. He wanted justice, not spectacle. But truth has a way of refusing silence. That evening, he met Elena in a quiet conference room. She slid a tablet across the table. Navarro was there. He knew about the operation. Marcus frowned. "Connection to Leia?" "Unclear," Elena said. "But he's been under financial pressure, gambling debts, disciplinary flags. If she had a source inside law enforcement, it's him." Marcus rubbed his forehead, the pieces clicking into place. "So, she knew we were coming before we even got inside." Before he could think further, his phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. It read, "You can't catch what's already gone." No name, no signature, but the phrasing was unmistakable. "Leia." He handed the phone to Elena. She frowned. "She's taunting you. Or warning me," Marcus said softly. Somewhere across the city, Jordan Tate, the 22-year-old college student who had filmed the supermarket confrontation, watched his video climb past 1 million views. His notifications flooded with comments, praise, outrage, conspiracy theories. A local activist group invited him to speak at a community meeting. "I didn't mean to start anything," he said to his roommate. "I just wanted people to see the truth." But once the truth ignites, no one controls where it burns. By midnight, Captain Reyes was on the phone with Carla Bennett. Their conversation was tense but controlled. "My officer made a mistake," Reyes admitted. "He'll be disciplined." Carla's tone was clipped. "Your officer compromised a federal case. Mistake is too soft a word." "He's not a bad cop," Reyes said. "Just a human one." There was a pause. Then Carla replied, her voice quiet but cold. "Then maybe it's time humanity learned restraint." At 2 a.m., Leia sat in a truck stop parking lot off Highway 90. She'd switched cars again, an old sedan with stolen plates. The vending machine's glow lit her reflection in the window. Hollow eyes, trembling hands, exhaustion wrapped in defiance. Her son's voice echoed in her memory. "Asterisk, Mom, when will this be over?" Asterisk. "Soon, baby," she whispered. Soon. But she knew it was a lie. There was no going back now. By dawn, bureau analysts had traced one of her burner phones to a warehouse outside Houston. But when agents stormed it, the place was empty, just a half-burned ledger filled with coded transactions across Texas, Louisiana, and Alabama. Evidence of something much bigger than Leia Moreno. Meanwhile, Derek Lawson sat in his dark apartment, unable to sleep. His wife wouldn't answer his calls. He replayed the video again and again, each time wishing it would end differently. But it didn't. The image of himself shouting, asterisk, "You expect me to believe that?" Asterisk felt like an echo from another life, one he no longer recognized. Across the city, the three names, Marcus Hale, Leah Moreno, Derek Lawson, had become threads in the same web, each trapped in a system too vast to see, too broken to trust. And as the sun rose over Houston, none of them knew that the story was only beginning to unravel. The morning came heavy with tension, the kind that lived in the quiet between sirens. The Bureau's command center flickered with movement, agents cross-referencing surveillance, phone pings, and traffic cams. Then came the break they'd been waiting for. Leah Moreno's vehicle, a stolen blue Honda Civic, spotted heading north on I-45. Marcus Hale was already behind the wheel before Carla Bennett could finish the order. Elena Vargas slid into the passenger seat, the GPS map glowing between them. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of silver and blue, 1,000 moving pieces colliding under the Houston sun. She switched cars again, Elena said, scanning the data feed. 2 hours ago, heading toward Exit 62, Refinery District. Too many trucks. She could vanish in seconds. Marcus tightened his grip on the steering wheel. Then we don't give her seconds. The unmarked SUV roared onto the interstate, siren silent, but urgency pulsing through every movement. Wind whipped against the glass, carrying with it the weight of unfinished business. Beneath his calm exterior, Marcus felt a steady fire building, a mix of anger and focus, the memory of Derek Lawson's raised gun still etched behind his eyes. Ahead, the helicopter's voice crackled through the radio. Suspect vehicle confirmed. Civic traveling north, weaving between semis. She's moving erratically. Marcus glanced at the screen. She's not just running. She's trying to bait us. Elena frowned. Bait us into what? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew Leah was clever enough to turn pursuit into trap. Suddenly, the Civic braked hard, tires screaming, sparks flaring as it scraped the guardrail. Marcus swerved, the SUV skidding just shy of collision. For a split second, he caught a glimpse of her in the driver's seat. Hair loose, eyes fierce, her face a blur of defiance and fear. Then she was gone again, cutting across the median in a cloud of dust and metal. She's turning onto a service road, Elena shouted. Marcus followed, the SUV jolting over uneven asphalt as the refinery skyline loomed ahead, smokestacks bleeding into the horizon. Leia's car disappeared between rusted trailers and forgotten machinery. She's boxed in, Elena said, breath catching. No, Marcus replied, eyes narrowing. She's cornered. That's different. He jumped out before the car, stopped rolling, gun drawn but low. The air reeked of oil and rust, the kind of place where things went missing and no one asked why. Somewhere ahead, a metallic clang echoed, a door slamming shut. Marcus followed the sound, slow and deliberate. Turning the corner, he froze. Leah stood before him, her gun hanging loosely at her side, tears cutting down her face. Don't, she whispered. You don't understand. Put it down, Marcus said, steady, voice carrying more exhaustion than threat. She shook her head. You think I wanted this? You think I'm the villain? The people funding this, they wear suits. They own the banks. I just moved their money. For a moment, he saw it in her, the same weariness that lived inside him. Two people trapped in different cages built by the same system. It's over, Leah, he said softly. Her lips trembled into a sad smile. You still believe that? Then she fired, not at him, but at the propane tank behind her. The explosion tore through the air, a flash of orange swallowing the yard. Marcus dove for cover, heat licking across his face. When the smoke cleared, Leah Moreno was gone, swallowed again by the chaos she'd created. And in that silence that followed, Marcus realized the truth. He wasn't chasing a fugitive anymore. He was chasing a ghost made of fire, fear, and the system that birthed them both. The morning after the explosion, Houston felt heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. The bureau was running on caffeine and tension. Leia Moreno was gone again, and every agent knew what that meant. Someone had tipped her off. Inside the field office, the atmosphere was surgical. Charts covered the walls, lines of red string connecting faces, phone numbers, and offshore accounts. The deeper they dug, the murkier it became. Every lead branched into something bigger, a network of shell companies, fake charities, and falsified government grants. But one name kept reappearing: Sergeant Luis Navarro. Marcus Hale stood at the center of the chaos, jaw tight, exhaustion visible in every movement. Across the room, Elena Vargas approached with a file in hand. "Navarro's ready to talk," she said. "But he's spooked." Marcus gave a curt nod. "Good. Maybe fear will loosen his tongue." Before they could leave, another alert flashed across the screen. An encrypted message traced to an IP address linked to one of Leia's old associates. The sender's name made Carla Bennett's brow furrow. "Evan Brooks," she read aloud. "The hacker." Elena nodded. "He wants to meet. Says he has information about the network, political ties, campaign donations, the works." Carla's voice was calm but wary. "We verify before we move. No more surprises." But for Marcus, the word verify had lost its meaning. Every time they verified, the truth slipped further away. That evening, they met Evan Brooks in a diner off Highway 90. The place smelled of burnt coffee and diesel, the hum of trucks outside a steady rhythm beneath the tension. Evan sat in a booth by the window, eyes bloodshot, hands shaking. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days, maybe weeks. "I want a deal," he said before Marcus even sat down. "Witness protection, reduced sentence, the whole package." "You don't get a deal," Marcus replied, voice low, "until we know what you've got." Evan hesitated, eyes darting to the window. "You don't understand. This wasn't just about food stamp fraud or fake businesses. The network's been laundering political donations through nonprofits for years. Houston's just one hub." Carla leaned forward slightly. "Names?" Evan swallowed. "Not over video. Not on record. I'll meet in person tonight." Before anyone could press further, the lights flickered. A car engine roared outside. Then, the sound of a gunshot. Glass exploded inward. The window shattered, sending shards across the booth. Evan jerked once, a crimson bloom spreading across his shirt. "Down!" Marcus shouted, dragging Elena to the floor. The diner erupted in screams as another round tore through the glass. Marcus fired twice through the doorway, glimpsing a dark SUV speeding away into the night. Tires screamed, then silence. He turned back to Evan, but it was too late. The hacker's head lolled to the side, eyes wide and empty. Blood pooled beneath him, seeping into the cracked linoleum floor. Elena's voice trembled. "He's gone." Marcus pressed his hand against the table, breathing hard. They silenced him. Later, at the field office, the evidence came together like a storm cloud. The SUV was traced to a shell company registered under one of Leia's supposed charities, the same organization Evan had just mentioned. Offshore accounts, false donors, and corporate proxies pointed towards something vast, something designed to stay hidden. "This goes beyond Leia," Carla said, her tone grim. "She's not just a suspect anymore. She's a liability to whoever's really pulling the strings." Marcus stared at the evidence board. Leia's picture was pinned in the center, 1,000 threads radiating outward. Somewhere in that web was the reason for Evan's death. Somewhere in it was the truth he'd spent his career chasing, and the proof that justice wasn't blind. It was manipulated. Meanwhile, in a dim interrogation room across town, Sergeant Luis Navarro sat hunched over a metal table, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Across from him, Captain Victor Reyes loomed, silent, disappointed. "You've got one chance to explain," Reyes said. Navarro's voice cracked. "It wasn't supposed to go this far. She just needed data, delivery routes, patrol schedules. I didn't know she was moving money through the department systems." Reyes slammed a hand on the table, the sound echoing through the room. "You compromised a federal operation. Do you have any idea what that means?" Tears welled in Navarro's eyes. She paid for my son's surgery, he whispered. I didn't have a choice. The room fell silent. Reyes straightened, his disappointment colder than anger. You always have a choice. Get yourself a lawyer. You're done here. When the news reached Derek Lawson, he was sitting alone in his car outside the precinct, the glow of his phone illuminating the guilt on his face. Texts poured in from other officers, fragments of gossip and blame. Asterisk Navarro's done. FBI's crawling all over us. Asterisk. He dropped the phone, staring into the darkness. The weight of what he'd set in motion pressed down on him. He had been so sure he was protecting the law. Now, he wasn't sure what the law even meant anymore. And somewhere across the city, as Houston's skyline shimmered beneath the haze of neon and sirens, Marcus Hale looked out over the evidence board and finally realized the truth. They weren't chasing Leah Moreno anymore. They were chasing the people she was running from. The neon sign of the Starlight Motel flickered weakly against the night sky. Half its letters burned out, casting a dull red glow across the cracked asphalt. It was the kind of place where people disappeared. Cheap rooms, peeling paint, the hum of vending machines filling the silence. Room 7 was where Leah Moreno had been traced at last. Inside, she sat on the edge of a sagging bed, her laptop casting a pale light across her face. The walls were thin, the air heavy with the smell of cigarettes and rust. Outside, Houston was burning, not with flames but with outrage. Protesters filled the streets, chanting for reform, holding signs with Marcus Hale's name alongside words like justice and truth. On the muted TV, footage of the supermarket confrontation played again, now spliced beside new clips, police press conferences, senators making statements, and Leah's blurred face labeled fugitive. She muted the sound and stared at a folded photograph on the nightstand. Her son, sleeping peacefully in another city, far from all this. Her whisper broke the quiet. Just one more day, baby. I promise. Then her phone buzzed. She hesitated, glanced at the caller ID, and sighed before pressing accept. Marcus Hale, she heard on the other end. His voice was low, controlled, too calm to be safe. You're outside, she said. Aren't you? It's over, Leah, Marcus replied. Don't make this worse. She laughed, not with humor, but with disbelief. Worse? You think this started with me? You think it ends with an arrest? You have no idea what you're fighting. Then tell me, he urged. Tell me before someone else gets hurt. There was a pause, the kind that holds everything unsaid. Finally, she spoke. Coming alone. No agents, no backup. Or I disappear again. Behind Marcus, Elena Vargas was already shaking her head. You go in there alone. She'll kill you. Or herself. Maybe both. But Marcus's eyes were steady, resolute. We've lost too many chances because we treated her like prey. Maybe if someone just listens, we'll finally hear the truth. Carla Bennett's voice crackled through the radio, sharp and final. Hale, do not break formation. You step out of line, and I'll have your badge before dawn. Marcus switched off his comm. The night air pressed close around him, thick with diesel and humidity. He moved toward room 7, each step echoing with a kind of calm that only came after too much chaos. He knocked once. Leah, it's Marcus. I'm unarmed. A long silence. Then the latch clicked. Inside, the room was dim, curtains drawn tight. Leah sat at the small table, a pistol resting beside a flash drive. Her eyes were swollen from tears, but her expression was hard, the kind of hardness that comes from surviving too long. Close the door, she said softly. He did. Why are you doing this? Marcus asked, voice low. She stared at him for a long time before answering. Because I thought I could outsmart them, the people funding this network. They don't lose, Marcus. They pay cops. They pay judges. They pay senators. Her voice cracked, and the mask fell away. I moved their money. I thought if I skimmed just enough, I could save my son before they noticed. But they did. They always do. They killed my contact in Baton Rouge last week. Evan Brooks was supposed to disappear, too. Marcus's stomach tightened. They already silenced him. Her breath caught. Then it's just me left. For a moment, the tension eased. Two people on opposite sides of the law, connected by exhaustion, by the quiet truth that neither of them truly believed in the system anymore. You don't have to die for this, Marcus said gently. We can protect you. She gave a bitter smile. Protect me? You couldn't even protect your own operation. The system protects itself. Then she reached into her pocket and tossed the flash drive across the table. Everything's on there. Transactions, accounts, names you won't believe. But once you open it, you'll see the cost. People higher than your badge, higher than mine. Marcus turned the flash drive over in his hand, its metal cold against his skin. Then we'll expose them. Before she could answer, footsteps thundered outside. Heavy, fast, uncoordinated. The kind of noise that didn't belong to trained agents. Voices shouted, FBI, step away from the door. Elena's voice burst through his earpiece, panicked. Local police showed up early. They're breaching. Leia's eyes widened in terror. They're not here for you. They're here for me. She grabbed her gun, backing away toward the bed. Marcus lifted his hands, calm but urgent. Leia, listen to me. No one's firing. You could still walk out alive. But her breathing quickened, wild and uneven. You don't understand, she cried. They'll kill my son if they know I talked. Where is he? Marcus asked. With my sister in Austin, she whispered. But if they find out The door burst open. The room flooded with light and shouting. Leia flinched, firing a single shot into the ceiling. Chaos erupted. Marcus lunged forward, grabbing her wrist before she could fire again. Leia, look at me, he shouted. It's over. Her eyes met his, wide, terrified but alive. Then, just like that, the fight drained from her. The gun clattered to the floor. Officers swarmed in, dragging her to her knees. She didn't resist. She only whispered one thing as they cuffed her. Keep your promise. Outside, yellow tape fluttered in the wind. The motel was sealed off, the faint smell of gunpowder still in the air. Marcus stood beside Elena, his jacket streaked with dust and sweat. She handed him a cup of coffee. You disobeyed orders, she said quietly. Then, softer, but you saved her life. Leia sat in the back of a bureau van, hands cuffed, staring blankly at the flash drive Marcus now held. You'll use it, won't you? She asked through the open door. Marcus met her gaze. We'll expose them. That's a promise. She nodded faintly, eyes closing as if surrender itself was the only peace left to her. Across the city, Derek Lawson's phone buzzed. It was Captain Reyes. Navarro made a full confession. You're off suspension. Lawson, Internal Affairs still wants your statement. And Hale said you cooperated. That helped. Derek didn't answer right away. His voice was quiet when it finally came. I'm not the same man I was that day, Captain. Let's hope not, Reyes replied, as dawn crept across the cracked pavement of the motel lot. Marcus Hale sat on the hood of his SUV, watching the horizon shift from dark to gold. Elena joined him, holding 2 steaming cups. She gave us the truth, she said softly. Marcus nodded. Now we have to decide what to do with it. He turned the flash drive over in his hands, the metal reflecting the first light of morning. Truth doesn't fix the damage, he murmured. It just reminds us what it cost. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sun rose higher, cutting through the haze, and the wind carried the faint echo of sirens far away. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, Marcus believed it could be won, one truth at a time. The morning after the Starlight Motel raid, the city of Houston felt changed. Smoke still hung in the air from the overnight protests, and the early sun fought to break through it, painting the skyline in muted shades of gold and gray. The world had seen everything now. The footage of Leia Moreno crying in a motel room, surrounded by flashing lights and armed officers, and Marcus Hale, the black FBI agent once humiliated in a supermarket, stepping forward with his hands raised, begging them not to fire. To millions, Marcus was a hero. To others, he was a problem, a man who had pulled back the curtain on a system built to stay in the shadows. Inside the Bureau's downtown headquarters, tension buzzed like static. Carla Bennett stood at the head of the conference table, her expression carved from steel. Behind her, on a massive screen, the contents of the flash drive flickered into focus. Offshore accounts, shell corporations, falsified donations. The data confirms what Leia said, Carla said grimly. 2 senators, 3 corporate CEOs, and one national law enforcement union fund, all tied to the same laundering network. Silence filled the room. If this leaks, she continued, it could destroy public confidence in every institution tied to these names. We're not talking about criminals anymore. We're talking about architects of power. Across the table, Marcus stood motionless, dark circles under his eyes, his hands resting on the evidence file. Then maybe it's time something broke, he said quietly. Carla's eyes softened for a fraction of a second. You've done your job, Agent Hale. But this isn't justice anymore. It's politics. And politics eats truth alive. He didn't argue. He'd seen it too many times. Meanwhile, Derek Lawson sat in a modest office across town, his police uniform gone, replaced by a plain gray shirt. His posture was slumped, his face pale. Across from him sat Dr. Amelia Foster, the department psychologist, her voice steady, patient. They suspended me indefinitely, Derek said. Public pressure. The department needs a scapegoat. Maybe that's not a bad thing, Dr. Foster replied. Sometimes stepping back is the only way to move forward. He looked down at his hands. I didn't mean to ruin that man's life. She shook her head. You didn't ruin it. You exposed what was broken in him, in you, in the system. Now you have to decide if you're going to stay bitter or start rebuilding. Derek sighed, voice trembling. I don't know where to start. That's where it begins, she said softly. When you admit you don't know. Elsewhere, in a quiet detention wing, Leia Moreno sat behind reinforced glass, wrists bruised from the cuffs. The sterile light gave her skin a ghostly hue. When Elena Vargas entered, she didn't speak right away. She simply placed a folder on the table and sat down. They're offering you a deal, Elena said at last. Full cooperation. Witness protection for your son. Leia blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. They'll really keep him safe? If you tell them everything you know, Elena said gently. Yes. Leia leaned back, her eyes glistening. You think I'm a monster, don't you? Elena shook her head. No, I think you were desperate, and desperation makes people do things they never thought they could. Leia's voice cracked. Then don't let my son grow up believing I was the villain. Elena pressed her hand to the glass. He won't. I promise. That evening, Marcus and Elena were back on the road, driving east out of Houston. The city lights faded behind them, replaced by open fields and long stretches of silence. They were following a new lead, one of the offshore operatives tied to the network. You ever wonder, Elena asked after a while, if we're actually fixing anything, or just exposing new layers of the same corruption? Marcus watched the horizon. Every layer we peel back hurts. But maybe that's the point. Healing never happens without pain. She looked over at him. You really believe that? He nodded. I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? 2 days later, the Bureau traced the last thread, a warehouse outside Charleston used as a front for the laundering ring. Leia's cooperation had been crucial. Her testimony had cracked the code. But when they went to bring her in for final questioning, she wasn't there. She tried to take her own life in her cell. They found her just in time, unconscious but alive. She was moved to a secure hospital under watch. When Marcus heard, he sat in silence for a long time. She didn't want to escape justice, he said finally. She just wanted to escape the noise. That weekend, Houston erupted again. Thousands filled the streets in the largest protest the city had seen in a decade. Among the speakers stood Reverend Isaac Moore, his deep, resonant voice carrying through the crowd and across every live stream. We've seen too many names, too many faces, too much silence, he said. Justice isn't just a word. It's a mirror. And right now, America doesn't like what it sees. The crowd roared, a sea of signs and fists raised toward the hazy sky. Among them was Jordan Tate, the young man whose video had started it all. He stood with a camera in his hand, not to record the chaos, but to capture the unity, faces of every color, every age, standing together. I didn't start this, he whispered to himself. The world did. That night, Marcus sat on the couch beside his wife, Sophia, the TV casting soft light across the room. The protests filled the screen, but the noise felt far away. You did what you could, Sophia said gently, handing him a cup of tea. He looked at her, eyes heavy. It doesn't feel like enough. It never does, she said. But maybe that's how real change starts, one small victory at a time. He nodded slowly. On the TV, Derek Lawson appeared at a press conference. His voice trembled, but his eyes were clear. No badge excuses bias, he said. No training excuses blindness. I can't undo what I did, but I can make sure it never happens again. Marcus exhaled, as if releasing months of pressure. Maybe people really can change, he murmured. Sophia rested her hand on his shoulder. You changed him, Marcus, whether you meant to or not. On the table beside them lay the flash drive, small, silent, and full of names powerful enough to shake the country. Marcus picked it up, turning it in his fingers like a confession. Then maybe, he whispered, there's hope for all of us. Thunder rolled in the distance, a Texas storm building, soft but certain. Inside, for the first time in months, Marcus allowed himself to breathe. Not in triumph, but in fragile redemption. 3 months later, the echoes of the Houston scandal were still reverberating across the nation. The videos, the hearings, the protests, they had reshaped everything. The Bureau changed its policies. Oversight committees were established. Civilian task forces were formed to monitor police departments. And though the headlines had faded, the cracks that had been exposed were no longer being ignored. Leah Moreno stood before a federal judge in a quiet courtroom. Her hair was shorter now, her voice steady, but there was no defiance in her eyes, only resignation. I've done wrong, she said, but I wasn't born a criminal. I was made one by a system that looked away until I broke. Her words spread across the media before the day was over. Some called her manipulative. Others called her brave. But to Marcus, who watched from the back of the courtroom, she was neither. She was simply human, a mirror of what happened when desperation met indifference. As she was led away in handcuffs, she turned slightly, her eyes meeting his. For the first time, there was gratitude there, quiet, fragile, and fleeting. Outside, reporters swarmed the courthouse steps. Reverend Moore stood at the podium, his voice calm but resolute. We don't seek vengeance, he said. We seek accountability. Justice must be more than a verdict. It must be a promise. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching. The words hit him harder than he expected. That was why he had joined law enforcement in the first place. Not for power, not for control, but to restore that promise. Across town, Derek Lawson began a new chapter. He worked nights as a security guard at a downtown library. No uniform, no badge. The halls were quiet, the air filled with the soft hum of fluorescent lights. And for the first time in years, Derek felt something close to peace. Each night, as he made his rounds, he would stop by a bulletin board covered in newspaper clippings, many of them about the supermarket incident that had ended his career. Sometimes he lingered there, rereading the stories. One evening, a janitor passing by stopped beside him. That you in the picture? The man asked. Derek nodded. Used to be. The janitor smiled gently. Used to be means you learned something. Some folks never do. Derek returned the smile, faintly. Yeah, he said softly. I guess I did. Back at the FBI field office, Elena dropped a new file onto Marcus's desk. 3 more arrests, she said. Looks like we finally closed the book. Marcus gave a tired smile. We closed the book, he corrected. Not the book. She sighed, leaning against the desk. You still think there's more? He looked out the window at the city below. There's always more. Corruption doesn't die. It just changes clothes. A week later, Marcus attended a community forum organized by Reverend Moore, a gathering of police officers, activists, and citizens to discuss reform. The auditorium was full, the air tense but hopeful. When Marcus stepped up to the microphone, the room fell silent. He took a deep breath and spoke. I've worn 2 uniforms in my life, he began. One as a city cop, one as a federal agent. Both taught me how easy it is to forget the people we're supposed to protect. Justice isn't about power, it's about conscience. And sometimes, the hardest justice isn't in punishing others. It's in confronting ourselves. The applause that followed wasn't loud, but it was real, the kind that comes from understanding, not excitement. That night, Marcus sat on his porch beside Sophia. The city was quiet, the sky scattered with stars. She rested her head on his shoulder. "You ever think about leaving it all behind?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Every day. But then I think about the people who can't." She looked up at him with quiet pride. "You've changed more than you realize." He shook his head. "No, the world changed me. I just listened." Across town, a candlelight vigil took place outside the courthouse, a memorial for victims of bias, corruption, and injustice. Jordan Tate was there, his camera capturing faces of every color, every age, standing together. "This," he whispered to himself, "is what justice looks like when people refuse to stay silent." When dawn came, the city felt lighter. Not healed, never fully healed, but breathing again. In the quiet halls of the library, Derek Lawson walked his rounds with steady steps. Leia's son began a new life in safety, far from a noise that had consumed his mother. And inside the bureau, Marcus Hale sat at his desk, a new file waiting before him. Another case, another story, another chance to do it right. On the wall beside him hung a photo from the supermarket, frozen in time. Derek's outstretched arm, Marcus standing calm, the crowd watching. He looked at it for a long moment. Once, he'd seen humiliation there. Now, he saw something else, the beginning of change. Messy, painful, necessary. He whispered to himself, "Justice isn't a destination. It's a journey." And as sunlight filled his office, Marcus Hale exhaled slowly, still walking that journey, one truth at a time.